Today, we're diving straight into a story that is honestly just incredibly powerful and deeply emotional. It's a journey that tackles a question so many of us struggle with, which is how do you completely change your life when absolutely everything seems stacked against you? Well, let's get right into it. We're going to unpack exactly why true long term success requires us to abandon that fleeting, temporary feeling of motivation and replace it with something much harder, but far more reliable. And that's permanent discipline. What if this is all my life will ever be? I want you to really just sit with those words for a second. Imagine whispering that to yourself, all alone, staring out a window into the night. Because this was the haunting daily reality for Adam. He was a teenager carrying this crushing weight. He had no money, zero confidence, and this deep, incredibly isolating fear that his poverty and his pain were just going to be permanent. All right, section one, the broken beginning, survival and silence. Let's look at exactly where Adam was starting from, because his reality was pretty stark. So Adam's world was practically defined by this profound emotional contrast. After his father abandoned the family with no goodbye, no explanation, Adam lived in this tiny, cracked apartment. He'd watched his mother come home just completely exhausted from these long shifts at a clothing factory, sometimes crying silently in their kitchen. And he carried that heavy silence with him to school. He'd sit completely invisible in the back of the classroom, wearing old clothes that the other kids would literally mock him for. But right next to him, his classmates were loud, they were laughing, and they were confidently planning out their bright futures. That painful contrast between his internal feeling of worthlessness and the loud expectations of his peers made Adam secretly wonder if he was in fact just a failure. And you have to remember, he was only 17. Think about that for a second. At just 17 years old, having zero support system, and waking up every single morning hearing the exact same echo in your head that you're never going to amount to anything, that is a terrifying place to be mentally. But as we know, every profound transformation has a breaking point. So, section two, the catalyst, the lowest point. This was the exact moment the illusion of safety was totally shattered. One afternoon, Adam comes home to a table just covered in unpaid bills, rent, food, electricity. And then, that night, the power was cut off. The whole apartment went completely dark and completely silent, except for his little sister crying while his mom hugged her in the dark. I want to just pause on that for a second. Imagine sitting quietly in the corner of that pitch black room. This was the exact moment something inside Adam snapped. He realized this cold, hard truth. Nobody was coming to save them. There was no miracle on the way, no hero, no shortcut. And then, the very next day at school, a teacher was going around the classroom asking students what they wanted to be when they grew up. You hear doctor, engineer, athlete. The room is just buzzing with confidence. And then the teacher looks at Adam and simply asks, "And you?" The whole room fell silent. Adam looked down. He literally had no answer. Some students actually started laughing. But this time, something shifted. That embarrassment he felt, it transformed into this deep, driving anger. He wasn't even angry at them. He was angry at himself. He realized he had spent years just feeling sorry for himself instead of actively fighting for a better future. Which brings us to section three, the decision, a spark of change. That night, standing in front of a mirror, Adam looked into his own tired, broken eyes. But he saw a little spark. He realized his life actually could change, but he had to become the strong person his family so desperately needed. Before the sun even rose the next day, in that quiet, cold morning air, Adam made three monumental promises to himself. Number one, stop complaining. Number two, become disciplined. And number 3, never give up on himself again. Now, notice there was no sudden burst of motivation here, no loud cheering section. It was just a quiet, ironclad decision made in the dark. And honestly, these 3 steps are tangible takeaways that we can all apply to our own lives right now. Moving on to section 4, the sacrifices, the cost of discipline. Because as the source material makes super clear, true transformation is a crucible. It demands heavy and usually very unglamorous sacrifices. It really comes down to this: temporary comfort versus long-term greatness. We see this all the time, right? Temporary comfort, like endlessly scrolling social media, sleeping late, partying, it destroys potential. While everyone else was wasting time on those comforts, Adam was relentlessly rebuilding himself for the future. He was studying, waking up early to exercise, listening to motivational speeches on his walk to school. He even got a small job after school and gave every cent to his mom. People called him boring. They mocked his discipline. But he just pushed harder. And the payoff? One evening, his mother looked at him with tears in her eyes and told him he was becoming a good man. She had noticed every single silent battle he fought. Now, you might think everything is smooth sailing from there. Not quite. Section 5, failure returns. Building resilience. Because life doesn't just hand you a reward the second you start trying. In fact, the hardest battles usually hit you right after you commit to improving. Adam started applying for better jobs, and he hit a massive brick wall. Rejected. He applies again, rejected again, over and over, and the frustration really started compounding. He began doubting if his discipline was even going to be enough. One night, absolutely exhausted, he sat all alone on a city rooftop looking out at the distant lights, and he just broke down and cried. Not out of weakness, but because he was just so incredibly tired of the constant struggle. But while he was sitting on that roof, this really profound memory surfaced. It was something his mother had told him once. Hard times do not last forever. Strong people do. Let that sink in for a second. This right here was the ultimate psychological turning point of his entire journey. Because Adam completely redefined failure in that exact moment. He realized failure wasn't a stop sign. It was active training. It was building resilience and preparing him for a stronger future. Every single rejection was a lesson. Every painful moment was preparation. So, what did he do the next morning? He got right back up. All right, section 6, the transformation, the breakthrough. This is where the compounding effect of all that invisible, quiet work finally breaks the surface. Let's look at how this played out. In year 1, Adam takes this small, low-paying online project with crazy long hours that most people would just ignore. But disciplined people know that small opportunities become big ones. Year 2, he works harder than anyone expected, and the client offers him compounding work. Year 3, the money finally starts flowing, just enough that there's food in the kitchen without the constant stress. His mom can finally smile without hiding her pain. Year 4, he builds a highly successful career, moves his family to a beautiful, peaceful new home filled with warm light, and gives his little sister the opportunities he literally never had. Success didn't just arrive suddenly. It arrived quietly, one disciplined day at a time. So when people eventually started asking Adam how he completely transformed his life, from being that silent boy in the back of the classroom, he always gave the exact same answer. And this is really the core thesis of our entire explainer. I stopped waiting for motivation and built discipline instead. Because motivation is just a temporary feeling that disappears the second things get hard. Discipline is a permanent habit that stays. The pain that once tried to destroy him was the exact tool he used to build himself. Which brings us to the end and leaves us with the absolute most important question of all. Because your current situation, it's not your final destination. you can rebuild yourself. But only if you make the decision to stop running from the pain and actually start using it as fuel. So I'll ask you, will pain destroy you or will it transform you? The strongest people in the world aren't born strong. They become strong through the struggle. The choice is entirely yours.